This week we're in Northumberland to explore Britain's most iconic coastal castle with a history hailing back to the Saxon kings of Northumbria.
And we're going to be digging into the past with the castle's latest archaeological excavations. Welcome to Bamborough Castle. Perched high on a rocky outcrop overlooking the North Sea, a fortress has stood at Bamborough for over 1400 years. From its origins as a Celtic stronghold to its transformation into a mighty Norman fortress, Bamborough has played a crucial role in the history of England. The castle's history begins in the 6th century when it was a stronghold in the Kingdom of Bernicia, one of two Anglo-Saxon kingdoms that would eventually merge into the Kingdom of Northumbria. King Ida of Bernicia built a fort here, and his grandson King Ethelfrith named the fort Bebbanburg. King Ethelfrith was a fearsome warrior who conquered more territories from the Britons than any other king had at that time. When he was slain in battle, his son Oswald fled into exile. But it was whilst he was in exile that Oswald met the monks of Iona, and the pagan son of a warrior king converted to Christianity. Oswald returned to Bebbanburg and reclaimed his father's throne, marking the beginning of a Christian Northumbria. King Oswald invited the monks of Iona to establish a monastery on the nearby island of Lindisfarne, and when Oswald was slain in battle, he was quickly venerated as a saint for his work in converting the pagans to Christianity.
And it's to St Oswald's Gate, the original entrance to the fort, that we're now headed to meet up with a team of archaeologists from the Bamborough Research Project.
So in this trench, we had a royal officers building. Imagine coming up from the other direction, having this massive timber hall. It would be very intimidating. So if you weren't supposed to be in the castle, you'd feel like you weren't supposed to be in the castle. And this is St. Oswald's Gate. You can look directly through, and Lindisfarne's right there. We believe this arch is Anglo-Saxon. The refurb is meant to mirror the Anglo-Saxon, the long, short style. And there, to this side is the postern gate that the Victorians tried to make more ruinsy. It wasn't ruiny enough. So welcome to the West Ward. This is the beating heart of industry during the Anglo-Saxon period. And the Saxon period shows that this is a hub of industry. It would have been loud and smelly all the time here for several centuries. So multiple centuries of workshops. There's a cobbled courtyard in here. There's a succession of halls, lots of workshops, lots of animal waste, and tons of metalworking. The medieval metalworking building was also associated with a coin hoard, which is also available to see in the keep. Those are 9th century Anglo-Saxon sticas. They're really, really good for dating things because they're only copper from about 820 to 867. They're silver and then really crummy silver before that. But when the Vikings take York, the minting stops for a while, and those coins are passed around. You get a couple forgeries. They're in use till the 880s, but then they're no longer legal tender. So where we found that hoard was in the wrong layer as well. It was in a more recent layer, and the associated metalworking buildings suggest that they're recycling it. So the juiciest thing that we found this season was an Anglo-Saxon penny from the 10th century, and it's silver, which is quite unlike all the coins that we found on this site in the past. We were able to narrow the date down to around 925 to 973, so somewhere between, somewhere in the 10th century before Edgar reforms the coins. And we can tell because one side of the coin has a cross and the other side has a cross. Right. In other periods, there'll be a face on one side and a cross on the other. But the only match is in a hoard on Iona. The only match we have for the coin, same die. What is it doing here? Even better, the coin is basically nonsense. The inscription doesn't make sense. Even what we could make out, the letters are backwards. It doesn't form any Saxon names. It doesn't form any Scandinavian names, no Byzantine or Frankish names that might be from the moneyers. It's just nonsense. So we think it's a forgery, and the forgery could be by an illiterate moneyer, because they have a vague idea what the letters should look like, but not able to piece them together into a recognizable name or word.
As the kingdom of Northumbria grew, its prominence and power made it a target for the Vikings. In 793 AD, a fleet of Viking longships approached the island of Lindisfarne, launching a brutal assault on the monastery, plundering the church and slaying the monks. And this was only the beginning of the Viking incursions in Britain. Over the next few hundred years, Vikings and Anglo-Saxons fought for power and land in Northumbria. Bamburgh's position made it a prime target for Viking raiders seeking to establish control over the north. The Vikings eventually breached Bamburgh's defences, and the stronghold was sacked. Bamburgh faced continuous threats from the Vikings, particularly when Sweyn Forkbeard launched a major campaign to conquer England. Bamburgh at the time was home to Uhtred the Bold, and Uhtred submitted to the Danes. Bamburgh and Northumbria were now under Viking control, and Sweyn Forkbeard went on to become the first Viking king of England. In 1066, Bamburgh faced another threat, this time from William the Conqueror and his Norman army. William was quick to realise Bamburgh's strategic importance because it was ideally situated to protect his newly acquired kingdom from the troublesome Scots in the north. For a while, William allowed the Earls of Bamburgh their independence, but the Anglo-Saxons in the north were keen to see the Normans out, and they rallied support from their Viking and Scottish neighbours. As the north continued to rebel against Norman rule, William's son led an army to besiege the castle, and in 1095, Bamburgh fell to the Normans.
The keep at Bamburgh was built in the 12th century, and it's a striking example of Norman military architecture. This massive stone structure, standing 80 feet high and 60 feet square, was built to be both living accommodation and a stronghold. Its walls were built to withstand a siege and are up to 11 feet thick in places. For me, what makes Bamburgh Castle truly awesome is its position in the landscape. Any army trying to besiege the castle from this side is going to have a nightmare trying to make a permanent camp on the sand dunes, and they're going to be battered by the wild weather systems of the North Sea. And forget about trying to take the castle from the inland side. It's absolutely impregnable. Just look at the size of its defences. Bamburgh Castle seems to be hewn out of the rock itself as a symbol of defiance. Now then, we've been in quite a lot of great halls. I would say this is probably the grandest we've been in today.
This is magnificent. Have you seen the hammer beam ceiling is just incredible. Not actually original though, it's not medieval. I know it looks it. It was built on the site of the original medieval hall, but this is a Victorian masterpiece.
Oh, these are nice. Brown Bess muskets. Ooh, East India pattern. I bet they've got Tower of London proof marks on. Bamburgh has got a very, very fantastic array of arms and armour from loads of different periods on display. It's very, very, very cool. And I've just noticed this, being a fan of the medieval, this is an original Wars of the Roses period sallet, complete with its beaver. Italian in make, very, very, very rare. It's fantastic to see one. The only other place I've seen one of these is in the Royal Armouries in Leeds, so it's great to see one here. This is a piece of me. Cannons, cannons, and more cannons. These cannons were put in place to protect the coast in response to Napoleon's threat to invade England.
During the Wars of the Roses, the castle was held by the Lancastrians. Yorkist forces, led by the Earl of Warwick, laid siege to the castle. The bombardment by Warwick's cannons was so severe that stones flew from the castle walls into the sea. And this was the first time an English castle had been defeated using artillery. The reduced need for fortified castles meant that by the late 17th century, the castle was in a state of disrepair. But in the late 19th century, industrialist William Armstrong purchased the castle, and he embarked on an ambitious project to restore and transform it.
Armstrong's vision was to restore Bamburgh to its former glory, whilst also making it a comfortable residence.
He carried out significant structural repairs, but it was all in line with the original construction to keep it authentic.
He blended historical accuracy with Victorian comfort, and the results are spectacular.
Armstrong wanted to make the castle accessible to the public again so they could appreciate its historical significance.
And thanks to the dedication of the Armstrong family, this iconic fortress has survived.